All right, everybody, buckle up because we're taking a deep dive into the beginning of infinity by David Deutsch.
Oh, yeah, I love that book.
So good, right? It's one of those books that's physics and philosophy and kind of bends your mind a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those books that makes you think about things in a whole new way.
Exactly. And we're going to try to unpack some of these really big ideas, like this idea of the beginning of infinity. And just a heads up, it's not about a point in time like the Big Bang or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not about a literal beginning.
It's more about this idea that knowledge and progress don't have any limits.
Right, like imagine a universe where almost anything is possible if we can just figure out the right knowledge to unlock it.
That's kind of a cool thought, right?
It is really cool. And Deutsch actually gives a great example in the book about this. He talks about how astronomers can study distant stars as like nuclear furnaces, even though they've never actually been to one.
It's true. How do they know? It's not like we can just pop over there and be like, yep, it's a giant nuclear furnace burning away millions of light years away.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. And it all comes down to this idea of good explanations. So a good explanation, it's not just like a simple description, right? It has to actually explain the facts, make predictions that we can test, and the more we try to disprove it, the stronger it actually gets.
So it's kind of like a puzzle
Yeah.
where there's only one solution that really fits all the pieces together.
Exactly. And you know, when you find that solution, when you have that aha moment, it's really satisfying, right? Just clicks.
Yeah.
And that's what a good explanation feels like.
Okay, I'm with you on that. But how does this all tie back to the beginning of infinity idea?
Well, think about it this way. Every good explanation that we discover leads to more questions, right? It opens up new avenues for exploration.
Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain, you reach the top, and suddenly you see a whole range of other mountains in the distance.
That's a great way to put it. And so this process of discovery, of finding better and better explanations, it never really ends. There's always more to learn, more to understand, more to explore.
So it's like we're all explorers charting this infinite landscape of knowledge, always pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Exactly. And that's what Deutsch means by the beginning of infinity. It's this idea that knowledge and progress are unbounded, that there's no limit to what we can potentially discover and achieve.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. But if we're always discovering new things, does that mean that ideas like creationism, where everything is explained by some kind of supernatural being, just don't hold up?
That's a good question. And I think Deutsch would say that those kinds of explanations, they're not really explanations at all. They're more like giving up
By
explanations.
saying, oh, a wizard did it and calling it a day, not very helpful if you're trying to actually understand how things work, right?
Exactly, because a good explanation should give us more than just a story. It should actually help us understand how the world works, how to make predictions, how to maybe even control and manipulate those things.
So it's not enough to just have an explanation. It has to be a good explanation, one that's testable, that makes sense, and that leads to even more knowledge.
Precisely. And that's how we escape those giving up explanations and keep pushing forward on this journey of understanding.
Okay, I like that giving up explanations versus good explanations. But hold on, doesn't this whole idea of infinite progress kind of clash with those other big ideas out there? Like the principle of mediocrity, which basically says humans are nothing special in the grand scheme of things.
That's an interesting point. And on the surface, they do seem to contradict each other, right?
Right, because one says we're insignificant and the other says we have this huge potential.
Yeah, but I think the problem with both of those viewpoints is that they try to put humans in a box. They try to define us with these fixed label.
Like, oh, humans, you're just a cosmic blip, or humans, you're the pinnacle of creation. It's all downhill from here.
Right. But what if the most remarkable thing about humans is our potential to break free from those boxes altogether?
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What do you mean?
Well, Deutsch talks about humans as universal constructors. It's this idea that we're not just limited to existing in the universe as we find it. We have the ability to transform our environment, to create new things, to even potentially change the laws of physics themselves through our understanding of them.
Wow, universal constructors. So we're not just along for the ride. We have the potential to actually shape the ride itself.
Exactly. And that potential is far from mediocre. It's mind-blowingly powerful. It means that we're not just a product of the universe, but we're active participants in its ongoing evolution.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So it's not just about understanding the universe as it is, it's about understanding it so well that we can actually start to shape it according to our own ideas and goals.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because this potential for infinite progress, for shaping our own destiny, it even extends to the very fabric of reality itself.
Hold on, are we about to talk about the multiverse?
We are, because if you really want to talk about mind-blowing possibilities, you can't avoid the multiverse.
All right, because that's the part of the book that I have to admit kind of made my head spin a little bit.
I hear you. It's a lot to take in. But it's not just about parallel universes, as wild as that sounds. It's about how our best understanding of physics, specifically quantum mechanics, leads to this incredible idea of a multiverse.
Okay, so before we go too far down the rabbit hole, can you give me the Spark Notes version of the multiverse? Because every time I try to wrap my head around it, I end up feeling like I need a nap.
Sure, sure. So the way I like to think about it is imagine a tree, right? A tree that's constantly branching out, growing new limbs, new twigs, new leaves with every passing moment.
Okay, I can picture that.
All right, so in this analogy, each of those branches represents a different possible history, a different outcome based on the choices that were made, the events that unfolded.
So is it like there's a universe out there where I actually listened to my mom and became a doctor?
Maybe not that exact scenario, but you're getting the idea. The multiverse isn't necessarily about these completely separate universes all lined up next to each other. It's more like this constantly branching tree where every quantum measurement, every tiny decision creates a new branch, a new possibility.
So less about me hopping on a spaceship and flying over to Universe B,
Right.
and more about this interconnected web of possibilities constantly unfolding.
Yeah, exactly. It's like every time you make a decision, every time a possibility collapses into reality, the universe splits, branches off into these different versions of itself.
Okay, so that's the multiverse in a nutshell. But here's the question that always gets me. If all of these possibilities are playing out somewhere, if there are infinite versions of me making different choices, does anything I do in this universe even matter?
That's a great question, and one that we'll dive into a lot deeper after a quick break.
All right, so now you got me really hooked. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back after this short break to unravel more of these mind-bending concepts from the beginning of infinity. So before the break, we were kind of wading into the deep end of the multiverse pool, talking about whether our choices even matter if every possible outcome is playing out somewhere.
It's a question that a lot of people grapple with.
Right. Because it can feel like, what's the point? Right.
Yeah, but I think what Deutsch would say is that it's not really about finding meaning in the vastness of the multiverse or worrying about those other versions of ourselves.
So it's not about whether I'm a rock star in some other dimension. It's about the choices I make and the impact they have right here, right now.
That's a good way to put it. It's about the power and the responsibility that we have as universal constructors in this reality.
Okay, I like that.
Hmm.
So how do we even begin to think about that? About having this power, this potential to shape our own reality?
Well, imagine for a second that you do have a superpower, right? The power to create real change in the world. What would you do with it?
That's a big question.
It is, but it's a question worth asking ourselves because the answer can tell us a lot about our values, our priorities, and what kind of impact we want to have on the world around us.
So it's not just about understanding these big ideas, it's about letting them inform our actions or choices.
Exactly. And I think that's where this concept of good explanations comes back into play.
Okay, remind me how that fits in here.
Well, just like we need good explanations to understand the universe and make progress in science, we also need good explanations to guide our actions and make good decisions in our everyday lives.
So it's about being able to sort through all the noise, all the different opinions and beliefs out there, and figure out what's actually true, what actually holds up to scrutiny.
That's a big part of it. It's about being critical thinkers, about questioning our assumptions, being open to the possibility that we might be wrong, and constantly seeking out better explanations.
So it's not enough to just have beliefs. We need to have good reasons for those beliefs, reasons that can stand up to scrutiny and debate.
Exactly. And that's where things like reason, logic, and the scientific method come in. They give us tools for testing our beliefs, for figuring out which explanations are most likely to be true.
Because not all explanations are created equal, right?
Absolutely not. Some explanations are based on solid evidence and logic, while others are based on wishful thinking, tradition, or just plain old misinformation.
It's like the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
If we're basing our decisions on bad explanations, on faulty logic, then it's no surprise if things don't turn out so well.
Exactly. So, cultivating that critical thinking, that
Hmm.
ability to discern between good and bad explanations is crucial, both for our own lives and for the progress of society as a whole.
So it's not just about being smart, it's about being wise, about using our knowledge and understanding to make the world a better place.
I love that because it's not enough to just accumulate knowledge. We have to actually do something with it. We have to use it to solve problems, to create positive change, to build a better future.
Okay, I'm convinced good explanations for a better world. But it can feel overwhelming sometimes, right? Like, where do we even begin?
It's true. There are so many challenges facing us, so many problems to solve. It can feel paralyzing.
Exactly. And it's tempting to just throw our hands up and say, someone else will figure it out.
Right. But I think that's where this idea of universal constructors comes back into play because it reminds us that we're not powerless. We actually have the ability to make a difference, even if it's just in our own small corner of the world.
So what you're saying is, instead of waiting for someone else to fix things, we need to step up and be the universal constructors of our own lives, of our communities, of the world we want to see.
Exactly. And it starts with asking ourselves those what if questions. What if we could solve this problem? What if we could make things better? What if we could create a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive?
I like that. What if?
Hmm.
It's a powerful question, isn't it? Because it opens up possibilities, it challenges the status quo, it sparks that creative energy.
Precisely. And that creative energy, that willingness to challenge assumptions and explore new ideas, it's what drives progress. It's what allows us to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles and create a better future.
So even though the universe might be vast and mysterious and full of unknowns, we don't have to be afraid of that. We can
Mhm.
actually embrace it, right?
Absolutely. We can approach it with curiosity, with a sense of adventure, with a willingness to learn and grow and discover. And who knows what amazing things we might find along the way.
I like the sound of that, a sense of adventure. Now you're talking my language. But before we get too carried away, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. How do we actually put all of this into practice? How do we become those universal constructors in a tangible, meaningful way?
Well, I think it starts with those good explanations we were talking about.
Hmm.
Because the more we understand about the world, about ourselves, about the challenges we face, the better equipped we'll be to find solutions, to make good decisions, to create positive change.
So it's about being informed, engaged, critical thinkers.
Exactly. And it's about being open to new information, to different perspectives, even to ideas that challenge our own beliefs.
Because none of us have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
We're all just figuring things out as we go along.
That's the beauty of it. It's a journey of continuous learning, a process of constantly refining our understanding of the world and our place in it.
And it's a journey that we're all on together, right?
Absolutely. We're all in this together, and the more we can collaborate, share our ideas, and learn from each other, the more progress we'll make.
I love that. So it's not about competition, it's about cooperation.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this incredible web of interconnectedness, and that the more we can support each other, the more we can achieve together.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. Collaboration, good explanations, universal constructors. But I have to ask, with all this talk about progress, about shaping our own destiny, does it ever feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves? Like, aren't there limits to what we can achieve?
That's a question we'll dig into even deeper after a quick break.
All right, because I love pushing those boundaries. We'll be right back after this short break to explore the limits of what's possible in the beginning of infinity. Don't go anywhere. All right, so before the break, we were talking about the limits of what's possible, and I have to admit, I'm kind of itching to know, are there any limits, or is it really like sky's the limit, but for like the entire universe?
It's a question that's occupied philosophers and scientists for centuries, right? Where do we draw the line? But I think what Deutsch would say is that focusing on limits might be the wrong way to approach this whole thing.
Okay, so instead of asking what can't we do,
Hmm.
we should be asking what can we do?
Exactly. Because every time we thought we hit a wall, we found a way to break through it, right?
It's true. Think about how much our understanding of the universe has changed even in the last century. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And for Deutsch, a big part of this comes down to his belief that the universe itself might be computational at its core.
Okay, hold on. Before we go full matrix here, can you break that down for me? Because I'm still not quite sure what it means for the universe to be like a giant computer.
Sure, sure. And to be fair, it's not like the universe is running on Windows 11 or anything. It's more about this idea that the laws of physics, the very fabric of reality, might operate based on principles of information processing.
So kind of like how a computer uses code to create images, sounds, experiences. Maybe the universe uses a similar kind of code to create, well, everything.
That's the general idea. And if that's true, then it means that the limits of what's possible aren't necessarily set by the physical laws as we currently understand them, but by the limits of computation itself.
So instead of saying, you can't go faster than the speed of light, we should be asking, how can we use the principles of computation to transcend the limitations of space-time as we currently understand them?
Exactly. And those are the kinds of questions that Deutsch wants us to grapple with. Because if the universe really is a computational system, then in theory, anything that can be computed could also exist physically.
Okay, now we're talking. Teleportation, time travel, creating our own pocket universes. Is that on the table?
Well, it's not outside the realm of possibility. Of course, we're a long way off from any of that. But that's part of what makes this idea so exciting. It pushes us to think beyond our current limitations and imagine what might be achievable in the future. A future shaped by our understanding of these incredibly powerful concepts.
It's almost like saying the only limit is our imagination, but on a universal scale.
It is a pretty mind-blowing thought. And it all comes back to that core message of the beginning of infinity. We are at the beginning of an endless journey of discovery, understanding, and creation. And as we continue on this journey, who knows what incredible things we might find or create.
That's a pretty inspiring way to look at it.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they do with all of this mind-blowing information?
I think the most important thing is to embrace that sense of wonder, that curiosity about the universe and our place in it. Keep asking questions, keep seeking out new knowledge, keep challenging your assumptions, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next groundbreaking discovery.
I love that. So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the beginning of infinity. It's been quite a ride.
It has, and we hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to keep exploring the endless possibilities that lie ahead.
Remember, folks, the journey of knowledge and progress never really ends. It's a lifelong adventure, and we can't wait to see where it takes us next. Until next time.